MeMonster.
Chapter 21. The next day. Siadam, who spent the night at Urwangni's lodging, came out early in the morning and took out his tablet, a distance away from the dungeon entrance. Unlike yesterday evening, there were numerous scientific machines placed near the dungeon entrance, which are said to be able to identify the wavelengths and patterns of the deformed dungeon. Frankly speaking, those machines are truly great, but the success rate with it when it came to deformed dungeons was sadly less than 20%. Your home is more comfortable. My shoulders are stiff. I don't even have a bed in my home, though. Taylor stopped Siadam from staying in one of the military barracks yesterday, and they spent the night at a fairly decent lodging nearby. Of course, it is more comfortable than Siadam's home, which doesn't even have a bed. Yet Taylor massaged her shoulders as if the lodging was uncomfortable last night. I'm strangely used to your home. It was not something he wanted to hear from an illegal resident, but Siadam kept his mouth shut. Apart from you, Siadam, numerous researchers, scholars, interpreters, and guilds gathered at the entrance of the deformed dungeon. Even large organizations such as the Cooperative of International Anomaly sometimes brought machines to interpret anomalies, and all of them showed up making a fuss about how to intercept the deformed dungeon that appeared in Inchin. However, they weren't doing any research, because Lost Day's giant machine was buzzing back and forth. Lost Day has taken over the situation of interpreting the dungeon. That black machine, which belongs to Lost Day, cost tens of billions of won and could measure other worlds' wavelengths. Lost Day seems to be trying hard to turn public opinion around through the media by saying that a time over will be a big deal and has taken it upon themselves to solve the deformed dungeon. Taylor 9 looked at Siadam, who was looking at the machine. With a dull voice, she spoke. What are they planning to do with a machine that size? Just leave them be. Most of the researchers here came well equipped. 3 famous interpreters of at least a rank, a doctor who wrote dozens of papers related to dungeons, and a guild the size of a forklift. On the other hand, Siadam only carried a tablet with an apple pattern. Do you want to go on a date with me to a dungeon? Yurei, the only woman in the world crazy enough to want to have their date in a dungeon. Isn't it more attractive, don't you think? Go by yourself. What crazy woman would go on a date alone? Naturally, you're a crazy woman. He shook his head at Taylor, who was constantly bothering him, then slowly looked through the magic notes he had written on his tablet. He was certain. It was written in different characters from the ones in Vivienda Magic Empire, but the magic of Julexa Empire also abided by the same basic principles. To put it simply, the formula A plus B equals C on Vivienda is written as G plus N equals D on Julexa. Maybe because it's not related to a protagonist, the Protagonist Hunter skill did not activate and the language could not be understood, but systematically it is still possible to read it. Full interpretation is impossible. Full understanding is also impossible. However, he can figure out what's wrong with it, albeit loosely. This magic circle is broken, isn't it? The magic circle on the door was surprisingly simple. A structure that opens just by infusing mana. But circuits that connect the lines of mana here and there were torn, erased, or broken. Holding his tablet pen, Siadam slowly connected the magical circuits. The other day, he took some pictures of information within magic books at the academy with his phone, but when he returned to Earth, it was all erased, so he has no choice but to rely solely on memory. He couldn't study well enough to cram for only 2 months, so he had no choice but to struggle. Somehow, I managed to restore the magic circle to perfect condition. Siadam, who finished restoring the magic circle with his tablet, soon rose from his seat. As he approached the entrance to the dungeon, Taylor 9 followed with a yawn. Please wait, we're currently analyzing the patterns of the dungeon, so please step back. Hunters are fighters. They didn't have this kind of knowledge. That's why the soldiers who were escorting the researchers tried to stop him, but Siadam spoke. I was interpreting the patterns of the dungeon too. How aren't you, Hunter? Is there a law that says hunters couldn't? There wasn't. There was also no law prohibiting a hunter from approaching. Hunters were simply restraining themselves to make it easier for the researchers to do their work. No. When the soldiers with suspicious looks were forced to let Yu Xiaodong pass, the researchers turned to look at him. What is it? Hunters are bothering us again. They can't even do anything, let's just wait. There were murmurs among the researchers, but Xiaodong didn't care. The researchers couldn't talk back to a hunter anyway. Of course not all of them couldn't. Aren't you Hunter Yu Xiaodong? Asked a researcher dressed in white, looking at Xiaodong. He had the armband of Lost Day, and his name was Han Yujun. One of the few rank interpreters in the world. Having the mysterious ability to interpret dungeons and anomalies, they were treated fairly high even if they were low rank, and it was obvious how Han Yujun, a rank interpreter, is treated in the guild. Perhaps his treatment is opposite that of Yu Xiaodong. Oh yes. The reason why Han Yujun spoke to him was obvious. That's why Yu Xiaodong ignored him and just passed by, but Han Yujun followed after him. Haha, it's been a while since I've seen you, but I'm glad you're. You know what, piss off. Han Yujun frowned when Taylor stepped in the way. Straight silvery hair, a woman with a vicious tongue contradictory to her cute face. Taylor 9, he couldn't help but know of this famous hunter. However, even though Han Yujun didn't have that much fame, his treatment in the guild was already higher than S-rank superhumans because he was a rank interpreter. Therefore, he had no interest in her. Aren't you Taylor 9? Do you know me? Of course, how can I not know? But I don't know you, so don't talk to us and fuck off, okay? I just came over to hello. Oh, come on, are you a politician? It's obvious you didn't come over just to say hello. Who doesn't see that even a child could see it? Taylor, who speaks her mind, and Han Yujun, who hides his thoughts, did not come to an understanding. Han Yujun, with a firm expression on his face, spoke. That's pathetic. What are you doing interfering with the researcher's interpretation? What, you're not making any progress. Honestly, what you and I have done so far is the same, right? Eat, shit, sleep, and look at the dungeon entrance. At her blunt remarks, the expressions of Lost Days guild members as well as Han Yujun soured. However, she wasn't wrong. This type of dungeon is very rare, and it's almost impossible for ether energy sources to penetrate through the entrance of the dungeon, so it's hard to even know what kind of wavelength it emits. Naturally, the expensive machines couldn't do anything. The research was proceeding smoothly. If you hadn't disturbed us, we would have made more progress. Meanwhile, what can you two even do here? He was right. On their side were excellent interpreters and researchers, and there were a lot of machines connected to a supercomputer sifting through the data. By comparison, what can two hunters without the related equipment do? Taylor, who had a lot to refute, was about to open her mouth to speak when beep beep beep. An alarm that was set up near the dungeon went off, and a signal came from the supercomputer. This. A reaction from the dungeon. The researchers and Han Yujun didn't look at the supercomputer, but instinctively turned their heads to the dungeon entrance. Rattle. There, ignoring Han Yujun, was Yu Xiaodong touching the entrance and opening the huge door wide open. Click click. Camera flashes were coming from all directions. Yu Haram felt very tired after having to constantly deal with the media. As one of the only 3 SS-rank superhuman in Korea and the guild master of the giant guild, Lost Day, which stretches all over the world, he has rarely interacted with the media. However, there is no reason for him not to step forward, knowing that he can reverse the current situation with just one press conference. A recent mutant event. The hunter industry has stabilized in recent years, so cases such as a person turning into a mutant would not quiet down as easily. That's why I told you to prepare the proper dose. The case has already caused quite a stir among the researchers at Kinetic Pharmaceutical Company, and he was in a bad mood because of the substantial damage. It was all the more so when he thought of Yu Xiaodong, who is the cause of it all. I don't know how a dying man was suddenly able to start running around. He was told that Yu Xiaodong's health had improved. However, he didn't care much. He didn't think a F-rank hunter could do anything. It doesn't matter, it'll quiet down after a few more days. As he raised his head, the reporter's eyes shined sharply. Their question was obvious. What are your thoughts on the superhuman who turned into a mutant last time? And for him to give answers that included the words failure or frustrated. However, he would never say anything that would discredit the image of Lost Day. The press was going smoothly, however, he was waiting for his real purpose in coming here. A reporter Yuharam had planted in advance to change the subject. Mr. Yuharam, citizens are expressing their concerns about the deformed dungeon in Incheon. I heard you had prepared countermeasures against that. Yes, that's right, we have 3 S-rank hunters, 30 A-rank hunters, and a new otherworld interpreter there. He didn't forget to stress that he invested tens of billions of won in machines on this endeavor. However, replying to these questions did not necessarily mean only favorable questions were asked. But I've heard that the otherworld interpreter is not working at all. Can you explain? Of course, there can only be one answer. Instead of giving up, we're just trying our best. I am sure there will be results. He knew in front of these deformed dungeons, science alone can never grasp its mysteries. So what he had prepared was an otherworld interpreter. It contains an unknown technology different from the science used by the Cooperative of International Anomaly. He was sure there would be news soon. Suddenly a commotion broke out. What, the entrance to the deformed dungeon has opened. What are you talking about? Tell me more about it. It been interpreted already. Lost Day succeeded in interpreting it. Tell me quickly. Reporters' phones everywhere were ringing. During this press conference, perhaps there were a lot of reports coming in. Yuharam smiled because this was the best possible outcome. The timing was good. Thinking so, he looked at a subordinated who approached him. MeMonster, the interpretation of the dungeon has been completed. I can see that. That's not all. When he turned his head, he saw the subordinate with a pale face holding a phone. Our guild didn't interpret it. It is said that the F-rank hunter Yu Xiaodam, who was on the scene, succeeded in interpreting it alone. What? Yu Xiaodam? Reciting this name, Yuharam's expression slowly stiffened. His guild deliberately carried out the interpretation of the dungeon, so they could turn their current public image around. This time he was sure it would work. Only. But what if he fails? All the reporters on the scene were hurriedly reporting this news. The reactions were immense. Lost Day invested tens of billions of won into machines. Guildmaster Yuharam boasted, I am sure there will be results, but what was the result? Why did they even bother coming forward? The identity of the hunter who interpreted the dungeon that even Lost Day couldn't. S-rank Hunter Taylor 9's advice: actually do something instead of talking nonsense. Chapter 22. Ahaha, stupid motherfuckers, you're making me blush. While camped near the dungeon entrance, Taylor burst out laughing when the reporters interviewed her. Lost Day had gone to great lengths to try and interpret the dungeon, so when they failed, the reporters' reactions were immediate. Taylor didn't miss the opportunity to shout, "You fools, you should have been better organized," at the reporters. Unfortunately, most of the words were filtered by the reporters. Interviewers are often criticized for excessive reporting, yet now they were trying to make their reports smaller. Even Yu Xiaodam was speechless. The soldiers were trying to control the situation with the journalists, but they still came in droves. On the other hand, Lost Day remained silent. Nothing good can come from saying anything here. Taylor was laughing at them indiscriminately, but then she suddenly turned her head to look at Xiaodam, who had a serious expression on his face. Her eyebrows creased. Bastard, you still have lingering feelings for Lost Day. Since the founding of Lost Day, Xiaodam stayed for 12 years. In the beginning, he stayed for one reason or another, but later, Hellgate became the reason. Hellgate. A strange hole appeared in the middle of the Pacific Ocean one day, an unknown place where no common sense applied. Why it appeared, what's inside, or how it's even maintained, humanity knew nothing about it. However, hunters have constantly challenged it in the hope of conquering it. Yu Xiaodam was also one of the hunters who challenged it. Saying most hunters died there is an understatement. The survival rate is 0.3%. Most of those who returned alive were not able to maintain their sanity or became disabled, thus making it difficult to live a normal life, let alone as a hunter, for the rest of their lives. Although the feelings the hunters felt while inside varied, one thing they all shared was absolute fear. There was also the famous case of a S-rank hunter who had survived Hell Gate, but when he returned to society, he pissed his pants when he saw a F-rank monster, acting as if he could never deal with a monster again. I don't know what the hell you saw inside. Taylor has never been there, so she doesn't know what UC Autumn experienced inside. However, she knows UC Autumn must still have lingering feelings after coming out of Hell Gate. That's why it is a problem. A few years ago, the international law changed so only a rank hunters or better could enter Hell Gate. UC Autumn has lingerie feelings about Hell Gate, but he couldn't enter it again because he's not a superhuman. However, using the power of Lost Day, it was not necessarily impossible. Taylor thought it was one of the reasons why UC Autumn stayed in the guild even though he was treated badly by them, and she also thought that's why he has a serious expression on his face right now as if he had mixed feelings. Hey, don't tell me you still have lingering feelings for that guild. Asked Taylor with her teeth clenched as if she's genuinely angry. What nonsense are you saying? I'm still not strong enough, so I was thinking how I could fuck them up. See, Autumn looked at Taylor as if he were looking at a strange creature. Lost Day remained silent to the media. The reason was simple. Even though they failed to interpret the dungeon, Haram thought that if they perform well inside the dungeon to the point where no can refute, their image will recover. Knowing the fact that reporters were rushing to the scene, Lost Day remained silent until it was time. That was until a report came back. The Dungeon Entrance Authority has refused to let other groups in. What? Answered Lost Day's rank interpreter Han Yujun with a straight face. What? Say that again. He turned to an officer and asked again because he couldn't believe it, but the officer with an embarrassed look said the same thing. Yes, the Dungeon Entrance Authority has. No, I know that. Why the hell? In the case of dungeons where entry is impossible, a right of entry will be given to the first person who discovers how to enter it. To stop hunters from indiscriminately entering and dying, an international law went into effect that states the person with the right of entry has full command of entry and the troops. In other words, there was ample room for self-interest. There must be a reason. What did they say? Yes, the Dungeon Entrance Authority, F-rank hunter UC Autumn, said his strength is enough. Oh, fuck him. Unlike the other guilds and hunter unions who were simply curious, Lost Day was pissed. This dungeon meant a lot to Lost Day. The tens of billions of won they invested were not just for their image, but to obtain the unknown knowledge that exists inside the dungeon. Lost Day has invested an unimaginable amount to uncover the very special knowledge that only a few people on Earth knew. Haram took a deep breath. No, he's only a F-rank hunter. Even if he goes with that crazy S-rank bitch, I don't think those two will be able to do anything. On the contrary, if they were to fail the dungeon attack, the media would quickly turn on UC Autumn, who is receiving high praises now. Thus, everyone's attention will be diverted from Lost Day. It was an opportunity. UC Autumn was making the same mistake that Lost Day made the other day. It's been a real headache ever since you fucked us. Haven't you done enough? Through the huge door, a colorful blurry space came into view. Well, it's certainly leery. Taylor 9, swinging her baseball bat in the air with a home run expression, spoke. Hey, are you sure just the two of us will be enough? It was a natural question, considering it's a deformed dungeon. The scientific equipment couldn't measure the general rank of the dungeon, what kind of monsters or natural phenomenons appeared inside. A world different from common sense. Even Taylor couldn't help but to worry about going to such a place. However, I knew. This dungeon, which could not be measured with scientific equipment, was made of mana, and for a deformed dungeon, its output is weak. Although its output is a rank, it's more or less a S-rank dungeon. Under normal circumstances, at least 3 S-rank hunters were needed to attack a S-rank dungeon. And wasn't I only wearing second-grade equipment? This would usually be too much to even attempt a B-rank dungeon. On the surface, this looks impossible. But there's no problem. I was certain. If we fail and both die, I'll curse you in the afterlife. It's okay, I know what I'm doing. Thanks to the client, I was able to figure out the name of the dungeon. This world is the fallen Julexa Empire's magic palace. Magic Palace. As the name suggests, this place is related to magic. However, the difference in development was noticeable. All day yesterday, while fixing the magic circle, I had my doubts. It turns out that the magic in Julexa Empire is much worse than those in Vivienda Empire. If I was to compare, it's like the difference between the technology of the late 20th century to those of the mid-21st century, or an overwhelming difference of more than 100 years. But unlike science, the difference in magic compared to technology is that magic could take a greater advantage by fully understanding inferior magic, allowing for more advanced magic. Although my knowledge can only be considered at the primary and secondary school level at Vivienda Academy, and while I can't control magic, I could still see it. As a professor at Vivienda Academy, I studied diligently. It'll signal an alarm if it gets dangerous. If things aren't looking good, the guilds Lekadin and Glock had asked me if they could step in and help. But why them? It's not just us who hates Lost Day, also saving us and attacking the dungeon can boost their image. Don't you think it's 3 birds with 1 stone? Really is that, so was there something like that? I wasn't going to go into a dungeon without countermeasures. I value my life. Also, there was one thing that was on my mind. As I turned around, several members of Lost Day were staring at me from the sideline. Wow, if glaring could kill a person. Avoiding their gazes, I laughed and spoke. Let's go in. Entering the dungeon, fallen Julexa Empire's magic palace. With the feeling of being sucked somewhere, the world changed in an instant. The feeling was similar to traveling to other worlds to kill protagonists, but slightly different. Soon I opened my eyes. Under the impressive backdrop of a setting sun, the huge half-destroyed magic palace came into view. Wow. Caution, this world's epilogue has ended. I tilted my head when I saw the message. If the epilogue has ended, then it has ended. What do I need to be cautious about? The client then spoke. When a protagonist finishes their story, their world loses its meaning. In other words, the present world is in the process of extinction. Not civilization, but the world itself. If you don't leave when the world is completely destroyed, your existence will be in danger. What the fuck? You should have told me that first. Momentarily surprised, I let out a sigh. Whether the dungeon collapses or not, nothing has changed. But the word epilogue was a little annoying. After shaking my head, I drew something on the ground with chalk. Taylor stared at me strangely, but I paid it no mind. Alright, let's go now. Taylor and I walked to the entrance of the magic palace. The entrance was simple. Just like the magic circle drawn at the entrance to the dungeon, it quickly opened when I added several similar lines to it. Soon the interior came into view. Taylor and I checked the interiors from far away using our telescopes. There was a 2-legged creature made of black metal walking around, ominously shimmering blue lights from its eyepiece. Crazy, is that Golem? No, it's a guardian. Golem and guardian. At first glance, the 2 creatures are seemingly similar, but are actually different. Golems are a natural substance that gained a heart and became a living thing, so there were various kinds like fire, water, earth, etc. In other words, it is a kind of spirit. But guardians are magical creatures. It is similar to a robot in a way. An energy robot that connects circuits and metals. And all those guardians and their circuits were clear in my eyes. It's so simple that it feels like reading a picture book as an adult. Simply put, it is a killing machine. Also, what about the structure of this palace? Vivienda's architecture was clearly aided by magic. However, the magic was hidden as much as possible, whereas this place was different. The circuits are clearly visible. As expected, I can figure out the structure of this palace. Well, I guess it's all meaningless now. When I was thinking about it, willing, suddenly an alarm went off in my ear. An alarm that is audible only to me. It is a very basic magic spell, the boundary alarm. It was of little use in Vivienda because it's like a child's toy and would be meaningless if someone knew a bit of magic. Here, no one knows how to use or sense magic. Meaning there is an intruder who snuck into this dungeon. I chuckled. Even the one who came were clearly visible. There were 3 people in total. No doubt it is the three S-rank superhumans that Lost Day somehow managed to sneak in. They weren't the ones upholding the law or anything like that in the first place. Since they had invested tens of billions of won, I had expected it. Still, I was dumbfounded by their brazen behavior. Maybe they're doing this at the expense of a huge risk. Taylor, we have visitors. I think we should still continue with the dungeon. Oh fuck, they're really annoying. You stay put, I'll go alone. What should I? I slowly looked through the interior of the palace. Only. The magic was surprisingly very proper and clear. This is only the second time I've witnessed magic properly, but I was certain. The magic of this place was not much different. Therefore, if a building is built using magic, it means a place full of magic. I put away my ether blade and ether gun. These won't be necessary for a while. From this point on, it's not you Seodom the Hunter, but you Seodom the Mage. Chapter 23. Morning of the next day. Member of Lost Day Han Yujin spoke with Guild Master Yu Haram over the phone. You know, this dungeon has something to do with magic. Magic. Earth, a technological planet with no magic. Han Yujin listened to Yu Haram's words carefully. No one on Earth has even found a trace of magic. There are many who desire it, yet not a single person has it. But what if someone obtains magic? The current power scale will tilt towards what nobody expects. Very few people know the deformed dungeon on Urwangni is related to magic. Yu Haram only found out about it through a special connection. Even large corporations and countries do not know this fact. Therefore, Yu Haram decided to take a big risk. I've already asked, only soldiers are allowed in. By international law, entry into deformed dungeons is strictly monitored. Due to the nature of deformed dungeons, it's impossible to establish communications to the outside world once you're inside. This led to numerous accidents, with the Elite's dungeon massacre from 10 years ago being the biggest incident of them all. No matter how much Lost Day spins it, they will not escape criticism if they break international law. That's why countless companies and hunters were waiting patiently outside the deformed dungeon. F-rank or not, they can't go in if they're not permitted. For that reason, Yu Haram took a big risk. To deceive international law, many people had to become accomplices. That's how important this case is to me to understand. When Yu Haram hung up the phone, Han Yujin gulped. He thought perhaps this might blow up, but soon shook his head. The opponents are one F-rank and one S-rank hunter. By comparison, they had 3 S-rank hunters. This is enough. Shortly after, Han Yujin calmly called up 3 S-rank hunters. Zhang Dajin, Yun Xiaojian, and An Jie. Each have been active for more than 5 years as hunters, and all have S-rank superpowers. Unlike him who can't fight, they could attack the dungeon, so he relayed the message from the guild master. You 3 will sneak into the dungeon. Is that so? As if Zhang Dajin had expected it, he nodded. I've finished talking to the soldiers. Now you guys just have to go in quietly, kill the 2, then endure a week inside. You can do that, right? The 3 hunters in front of Han Yujin can clear a S-rank dungeon with a high success rate. It's also unlikely for the deformed dungeon here to be SS rank because it has rarely been the case, and even if it is, it won't be a problem for the 3 to stay near the entrance for a week. In the first place, if it's really a SS rank dungeon, those 2 inside will not be able to survive. Assuming everything goes as planned, the guild master wants a flawless performance. The plan was to send a rescue team after a week if there's no news from the 2 who disappeared. That is to say, the dungeon attack is deemed a failure after a week. After killing Yu Seodom and Taylor 9, the 3 hunters will hold out for a week, then the rescue teams will be dispatched to save Yu Seodom and Taylor 9. Then the 3 hunters will blend in with the rescue team and clear the dungeon safely. Machines don't work inside the deformed dungeon. Strangely, even radio reception doesn't work. At best analog Morse code transmission is possible. If anything happens, make sure to contact me. Yes, however, there won't be a need for that. They are 3 S-rank superhumans who are considered veterans in Lost Day. Although the other side has a S-rank superhuman, at that level, the 3 of them will be enough. There's no problem. Yes, let's go now. Late morning. The number of soldiers standing guard at the entrance to the dungeon exceeded 20, and among them there was a S-rank superhuman. Han Heejung, a middle-aged man of the colonel rank, creased his eyebrows as he saw 3 superhumans approaching. Nonetheless, Jang Dajin approached him and spoke. "You've worked hard." Han Heejung showed a stiff expression. He knew very well what would happen inside if he let them in. But there was nothing he could do. This morning, a sudden order came from the top. Permit entry to the 3 hunters from Lost Day. The order wasn't sent just to the army, but the Cooperative of International Anomaly Organization as well. As a soldier, Han Heejung has no choice but to follow orders. "Sooner or later y'all have to repent," said Han Heejung, leaving his post quietly. "That day will never come." After brushing the remark aside, the 3 hunters quickly entered the dungeon. Chwak. The smell of a different environment assaulted their noses as soon as they entered. Feeling the stuffy and heavy air, their faces crumbled. One of a hunter's basic equipment is an air purifier and oxygen filter, but it is still very hard to adapt to other worlds' environments. Sometimes even the gravity was different. This place looked similar to Earth. They raised their heads and looked straight ahead. It was morning on Earth, but here the sun was already setting. A huge, half-destroyed palace welcomed them, and somehow it gave off an ominous feeling. Jang Dajin slowly looked around, trying to calm his nerves as much as possible. Fortunately, there was no reaction from their sensors. "Look at this, isn't the dungeon interpreter a little weird?" "What?" Numerous dungeons have appeared over the last 30 years, and now it's possible to find out the name of a dungeon using modern technology. Once an anomaly detector captures the characteristic of a dungeon by its name, they can start attacking the dungeon. "But Fallen Palace. What's wrong with the name of this dungeon?" This was normal in the past, not so much these days. I think this is a new dungeon type. "That palace, I've seen buildings in dungeons before, but never a palace. Is this a first?" asked the female hunter on Jay. The 2 men were stumped as well. But one thing is certain. The palace entrance was wide open, which means their prey are inside. "Let's go." The 3 superhumans walked cautiously. There's no chance for them to be discovered. But among the opponents was a S-rank superhuman, Taylor 9. It can become troublesome against her ability, so they did not underestimate her. Anjay activated one of her superpowers, a detection ability. Although it's low rank, it has the effect of identifying the path a target has recently taken. UC Autumn was recently here, so it wasn't difficult to figure out. What's wrong?" "No, I think they took this strange path." She turned her head, pointing to a space hidden between 2 walls. "They went in there." There were bodies of monsters that looked like golems scattered everywhere. All of them had holes in their chests, waist, and head, so it is assumed to be Taylor 9's doings. However, if they had defeated all these, wouldn't it make sense to head through the main passageway? Why did they go there? They couldn't understand it, but regardless, they had to chase them. "We don't need to know why, just follow after them," said Jang Dajin to the other 2, who nodded their heads. They quietly and quickly moved. The only time they felt tense was when they entered the dungeon. However, the further they pursued UC Autumn, the more strange it felt to them. Because the path UC Autumn took was completely different from normal thinking. Usually this type of dungeon has a boss monster at the top. "Why are you heading underground?" Jang Dajin thought they might have been noticed, but soon shook his head. They had neither a sensing ability nor a machine. With Anjay's state-of-the-art sensors and sensing ability, they could not have been noticed. But even if they had the thought that they were being followed, why would they wait underground for someone to show up? Also, attacking an S-rank dungeon would take a longer time. That's how they rationalized it in their heads. Finally, the deepest part of the underground. They have just arrived at a huge place called Heart of Mana, something modern people can't know or understand. They suddenly had a thought. "Don't tell me this is a trap." It was a strange place. Columns with unknown patterns were erected jaggedly, and the ceiling was unusually high. And in the middle lay a giant rock that had lost its luster and looked as if it would crumble at any minute. What people on Earth may not know is that this giant rock is the heart of mana, a generator that powers every magic building. Although all the mana has been lost, somehow its vibrant feeling still remains. Jang Dajin looked at Yu Xiaodam, who was petting the rock, and spoke. Did you know we were coming?
Yes.
Then why did you run away? Asked Jang Dajin as they looked around. They couldn't see Taylor 9. Where is she hiding? But they were not worried. Because Yun Xiaojian's ability specializes against superpowers. Anjay, who has the abilities Etha Shot S and Target Tracking D. Yun Xiaojian, who has the abilities Etha Discharge S and Etha Disruption A. And Jang Dajin, who has the abilities Etha Shield S and Perfect Physique S. There are very few cases in the world of people awakening dual superpowers, and when there is, it is rare for both superpowers to be S rank. If Yun Xiaojian disrupts the superpowers of the target, Jang Dajin rushes with a body stronger than steel, and Anjay uses her Etha bow to shoot down the target. Even Taylor 9, the top S-rank hunter, will not be able to survive. Suddenly Xiaodam spoke. Taylor is hunting right now. It's been a while since I've unwind.
What?
Walking slowly, Xiaodam placed his hand on a pillar. The heart of a mage's building. It is a place that preserves the life of the building itself. Wouldn't there be precautions in place to prevent attacks against such a place? Although the heart was shut down because the building died, the rune still remains. A kind of security system that activates using magic to immediately shoot down all intruders. Although the heart of mana is quite old-fashioned compared to Vivienda's, and it's dead because most of the runes were damaged. Still, there's no problem. Xiaodam had already finished his preparation by interpreting all the runes here earlier before they came. A mage is a person who prepares. And as a F-rank hunter, Yu Xiaodam has always prepared. He waited 3 hours to catch a F-rank monster. He waited 48 hours to catch a E-rank monster. It took a month to hunt D-rank monsters. He prepared to the point where people thought he was crazy, and so, at least when it comes to preparation, it could be said that he's superior to a mage. Well, let's go, kill him first and then find her. When Jang Dajin's words fell, they each took out their bows, shields, and wristband. 3 S-rank hunters who have the most optimal superpowers to deal with a hunter. No matter what tricks the F-rank hunter has, they thought they could easily defeat him. To them, it will be like swatting a fly. The moment Jang Dajin rushed in,
Bitchy.
a pillar of light fell from the sky. Taylor patted her shoulder with her baseball bat while twirling 3 spheres of light in her left hand.
Kung.
A strange house-sized S-rank monster called a hybrid chimera fell. Although it's a powerful monster that many S-rank hunters would struggle with, Taylor 9 was able to defeat it with only a light scratch. Unlike robots, these cute things have ethas, right? Unfortunately, the enemies Xiaodam said were guardians had no ether crystal even after she killed them all. However, ether crystals could be extracted from the various types of chimeras she had defeated and has collected a considerable amount. Having extracted the last ether crystal, she looked back with a worried look. You hunt to your heart's content, it'll be right with you after serving our guests. After saying so, Yu Xiaodam stayed back alone in the deep underground. Although he was prideful, he was also cautious in everything. She wanted to help, but he was so confident that in the end she agreed. When she thought about it, Xiaodam has always been confident. Taylor recalls a memory from that time. 15 years ago, when the 8 children became hunters. Even when all but one person awakened their superpowers. When they awakened E-rank superpowers and he didn't. When it became D, C, and finally a rank. Xiaodam was still full of confidence. Just because we gained superpowers, we didn't want to invade his space, thus everyone didn't cross that line. That's why Taylor was hesitating. But she couldn't help but worry. What the heck, let's just check, I feel uncomfortable hunting. Eventually, Taylor turned around and went back the way she came. Kagung. Also, what the hell is that noise? Going back to the place where they split up, she frowned at the earth-shaking vibration. The sounds of a slight explosion, something striking and something falling. As far as she knows, that did not come from Yu Xiaodam. With an uneasy feeling, Taylor clenched her teeth and ran towards the underground. When she got to the entrance, She saw a pillar of flame rising to the sky and hunters with the Lost Day armband.
What is that?
Taylor widened her eyes, trying to grasp the situation. A standoff between 3 S-rank hunters and 1 hunter. It couldn't be you, Siadam.
It's impossible. She thought as such. What the hell is that?
A bolt of lightning fell from the sky. Then, a red circle rose from a line drawn on the ground and burned everything in its vicinity when a pillar lit up. This was a kind of superpower she has never seen before. There were not just one but several such phenomenons happening. It was none other than you, Siadam. Since when did you gain superpowers? No, before that, does this even make sense? Among the many superhumans recorded on Earth, the largest number of superpowers a person had were 3. But not even superpowers could create such strange phenomenons. Every time you, Siadam, ran like the wind and touched a wall, the air curved, rays of light poured down, or blue beads rolled around. It was incomprehensible to modern superpowers. The 3 S-rank hunters were wailing at the absurdity, unable to withstand the difference in power.
What the hell is this?
They thought he would beg for his life. But it is them who is now begging for their life.
What the hell is that?
Taylor was speechless at the absurdity of 3 S-rank hunters being unilaterally slaughtered. Unknowingly, she looked at Siadam's face. He was smiling. She has never seen him this happy while fighting before. He who doesn't have talent. He who doesn't have superpower. His 30 years of existence had always been a struggle from the bottom. For the first time, he is a genius with overwhelming power. Looking at his expression, all questions disappeared from her mind. It's just she was happy. It made her happy seeing Siadam happy.
What that is. How it happened. Only.
Such things didn't matter at this moment. Those who have always stood at the pinnacle. Watching Siadam tear at the peak from the bottom. Taylor 9 thought. Wow, so crazy, it's fucking beautiful. No other words were needed. A mysterious and beautiful battle that has never been seen before. For a long time, Taylor 9 looked at the scene bewitched. Chapter 24. The 3 hunters who were continuously cooked by fire, burned by electricity, and frozen were in tatters on the ground. I shrugged my shoulders and approached them. I felt very refreshed after scratching this itch. Slowly approaching them, Jang Dajin, who managed to pull himself together, groaned. I knew these 3 hunters very well. There's no way I wouldn't remember. These are the guys who have outright ignored me ever since I first joined the guild. At the time, I couldn't do anything and had to endure, but now it's different.
That's amazing,
said Taylor 9, slowly approaching. She looked at the hunters on the ground, then pouted her lips and asked, "What's this? How did you do that you were moving so fast and shooting laser beams out of your hands?" I don't remember shooting laser beams out of my hands. I already told you, I'm a dimensional returnee. To be precise, I am not a dimensionally returnee, but a dimension traveler. In any case, I just kept it simple. HMPH, obviously, dimensional returnees use unusual powers that are different from superpowers. It's just that I didn't really expect you to be one. In fact, the place where I can use this ability is limited. I had to use this building's magical security system, something that's not found on Earth. However, since such a place existed, it was possible to use Arisley's mana circling to go wild, which is why I intentionally lured Lost Day here. Though I didn't expect them to come here in the first place. With a disheartened look, Taylor spoke. Is this why you asked me to come with you?
Yes.
I thought it was a date, so I even wore my nice underwear and dressed up. Who wears such a thing to a dungeon? Of course it wasn't just for that reason. Usually, if a B-rank dungeon is cleared alone, I would be paid 16 million won by the state. A rank dungeon is 32 million won. As the number of participants increases, the amount each receives would obviously be less, so I didn't want that to happen. Also, I was sure it wasn't dangerous. Since this is a S-rank deformed dungeon, the amount varied, but the minimum would at least be 100 million won. That is only the monetary portion of the reward. The real reward is monopolizing all the items and knowledge found in the dungeon. So if I let others enter, wouldn't I be giving away my rewards to others? When I looked at Jang Dajin, he groaned with his head on the floor. To be honest, I am doubtful. Seeing you guys spend tens of billions of won trying to get in here, and it seems like you're putting a lot of effort into your image reform. If that is your plan, it doesn't make sense to follow me in the first place. So I am wondering if coming to kill me was really the reason. Jang Dajin nodded immediately. Thwack. Taylor trampled his head with her foot. Bullshit. She patted her baseball bat and spoke. You're nodding as if you already prepared an answer. Yes. Koa. It looks like there was no pressure on her foot all. But I knew very well that ether was leaking under the sole of her foot. Jang Dajin would not be able to hold out as he's already hurt. Also, I've heard the pain is so unbearable that even superhumans couldn't endure it. Tell me, said Taylor, then exactly 14 seconds later. Jang Dajin opened his mouth after spasming like fried pork belly on a grill. All right, I'll tell you. Oh, how come you've endured longer than the time it took to bake cheese, so what's the reason? Magic to find out about magic. Magic. Taylor frowned at the strange word. Yes, Mom, I don't know the details. There was a rumor that there's something magical about this deformed dungeon, so the guild became interested. Oh yeah, so magic, that's amazing. Is there anything else? Oh, we heard this dungeon had to do with magic, so we have to investigate it, said Jang Dajin, looking at me with trembling eyes. Well, they deserved it for getting in my way. I also thought it was unreasonable for Lost Day to try and kill me in this deformed dungeon after my minor retaliation. Magic. It's been 30 years since monsters and superpowers appeared, and people have taken it for granted. Now there are even dimensional returnees and people who single-handedly wielded power rivaling that of an army. It's no wonder there are people who believe magic is real and not a superstition. But if Lost Day is really convinced in the existence of magic and has begun to go to great lengths to find it, I can't sit back quietly. In a sense, before they get magic, would they leave me alone when I am in the way? Unlikely. That's why I will have to deal with two things from now on. Don't let Lost Day harm me socially. Don't let Lost Day harm me physically. The first is to use the media, but the second is that I needed a group to belong to. Which means I need a guild. However, none of my connections have a larger group than Lost Day, but even if it did, I held no value for them to protect me. This is annoying. Now that it has come to this, it can't be helped. I have no choice but to cut down some of the power on the other side. Yes, besides that, tell me more. Ah, fuck, your spit went everywhere. Isn't that because you used too much force? Did I? Said Taylor with a smirk. I do like to tease people, but it's not much fun teasing these bastards. After prying a little more information from them, Taylor drilled a hole through each of their chests, killing them instantly. She was going to crush their heads with her baseball bat, but Siadam yelled at her to stop. The face is the most valuable thing to have as evidence. Then, for a woman who had just killed 3 people, Taylor smiled with a lively face and spoke. Shall we continue our date? S+ rank monster Demolik. That is the boss of this dungeon. The target has traces of the former protagonist. The protagonist. Correct. The target was once the protagonist who finished their epilogue. Then why would the world end? Demolik was located at the top of the palace. Thanks to that, I could see the spectacular view of this world. This world is ending. The ground and sky were slowly disappearing. The existence of this world was forcefully consumed by the protagonist. When a world revolves around the protagonist, its energy to maintain itself is inevitably concentrated on the protagonist, and once it's used up, the protagonist will see the epilogue. With the ending and the world having lost its energy, it will slowly collapse. The collapsing worlds will roam through dimensions until they eventually cease to exist. However, it often appears in the form of a dungeon in other dimensions. Oh, was it something like that? That's why I made the contract to kill protagonists. Protagonists should not exist in the world. A person who monopolizes the blessing of their world and consequently hasten the collapse of it. Demolik once had 12 wives, 10 of thousands of loyal subjects, and everyone believed and followed him. But after the epilogue, the protagonist had consumed all the clichés and could no longer keep them with his own power. He took it for granted that his wives only loved him. One by one, they left to other men after being neglected. His loyal subjects conspired to assassinate or rebel against him, and the people revolted due to discontent. The man who became the hero due to the world's blessing had lost everything once the blessings disappeared, and eventually became a skeleton in front of them now. Without blessings, he could not do anything, so in the end he couldn't even become a proper lick. To be honest, it isn't hard to defeat the Demolick. It failed to advance to a lick, so it couldn't even use magic properly and had to fight physically. Taylor's superpower is Light Refraction S+, a skill in which she summoned balls of light in the shape of a sphere, controlled it, and overpowered enemies with a move that disregarded the laws of physics. Its output was almost the same as SS rank. Her superpower is fraudulent, and even her equipment is fraudulent. Exactly 3 days. From entering the dungeon to the deaths of the 3 hunters from Lost Day to the fall of the once protagonist. I could read the circuits in the palace and the structure of this dungeon, so it was easy avoiding the dangerous areas and saving time. The dungeon will disappear once I leave. However, I don't intend to leave yet. You're staying for 4 more days.
Yes.
Why? I am trying to pull aggro. You're crazy. Taylor laughed while giggling. I brought enough food to last a week, and it is more than enough if I count the food from the hunters of Lost Day. If there is one problem, it's that there isn't much to do here. So I was going to take this time to practice magic. I had decided to reveal my secret of knowing magic to Taylor. We've always shared many secrets with one another. Anyways, why aren't you doing anything?
What?
Smacking her lips, Taylor slowly approached me. We are a young man and woman, what shall we spend 4 days doing? Hey, are you crazy? There are hundreds of years old dead bodies split into 8 pieces scattered everywhere. It's beautiful and nice.
Crazy bitch.
I think she really has a screw loose somewhere. Yes, it's 23:50 here in Inchin City. It's been almost a week since 2 hunters entered the deformed dungeon. The reporter continued. Rescue teams and numerous hunters are on standby in front of the deformed dungeon. A week has passed since UC Autumn and Taylor 9 went in. They left exactly 00:00 and at exactly 00:00 a week later, numerous guilds will begin to enter along with the rescue team. Among those who are waiting is Han Yujun. It's going as planned. Watching the news, Han Yujun leisurely chewed gum. Even when the time comes, he won't be entering the dungeon. He isn't a rank interpreter with no fighting capability. However, he has told his guild members to take precautions several times because they were going in. Once you're inside the dungeon, find the 3 S-rank hunters waiting somewhere. Make sure to turn on your analog signals so you can find them. It was a very hectic situation because reporters were camped around the dungeon. It's because the deadline is approaching. Netizens were also going wild. He looked through the posts on social media and read them. What can a F-rank hunter do? Did they end up dying? There were even malicious comments like LOL. Of course, most were not like that. Many posts were expressing their condolences or regret. The important thing is that their death is a foregone conclusion. Very few people can survive within a deformed dungeon for a week. It's possible that his guild members wouldn't be able to hold out either. To be honest, that's fine with Han Yujun. Even if they died, they would have been able to deal with UC Autumn and investigated some of the deformed dungeon. There are 5 minutes until the deadline. Let's hear from an expert now. I think they. When a boring expert came on, Han Yujun turned the news off. They will enter any minute now. Han Yujun is not the only one who thought so. Every other hunter here held their equipment with a solemn expression, and even the reporters lifted their camera to film the moment they would enter. Suddenly, the entrance to the deformed dungeon disappeared, then a man and woman appeared.
What?
At the same time, every reporter started talking. Breaking news: Hunter UC Autumn and Hunt Taylor 9 successfully attacked a deformed dungeon and have returned. Han Yujun gulped, swallowing the gum in his mouth without realizing it. There were cheers and sighs of relief everywhere. However, Han Yujun was speechless. God didn't abandon them, huh? Where's Hunter Yu Seatum and Hunter Taylor 9 going all of a sudden? Slowly, Han Yujun stepped back instinctively, but Yu Seatum was approaching him faster. Only. No, it can't be. There's no way, he thought. Now we can see that they came out of the dungeon with 3 big sacks. What the hell is that? Thud. Yu Seatum and Taylor threw the 3 sacks in front of Han Yujun. Immediately, the sacks opened, and the contents inside were revealed. Han Yujun dropped the tablet he was holding, but the reporter's voice didn't stop, and suddenly it all rushed into his ears. The bodies of S-rank hunters from Lost Day were found inside the dungeon. What the hell happened? Chapter 25. Ichwang Neighborhood. Celeste walked in a standard modern cafe. These days, all the interior designs were the same, and the young people in their 20s who frequented these cafes only cared about the stimulation it provided, rather than its cost. Particularly a cafe in Hwayang, where a prestigious university and a prestigious hunter academy are located. This place has been visited by college students ever since it spread on social media, and despite the frequent visits from pretty men and women, including celebrities, Celeste was quite conspicuous, making the customers turn their heads once in a while. She took a seat by the window, took off her light pink trench coat, hung it behind her chair, and gently brought out her tablet. She flipped to the news. With eyewitness accounts coming out one after another, a photo of Lost Days members sneaking into the deformed dungeon was found last night. A week ago. Although it was amazing that 2 hunters successfully cleared a deformed dungeon, news also came that 3 hunters snuck into the dungeon, violating international law. The shocking revelation came when it was discovered that the 3 hunters were actually S-rank members from Lost Day, and that they were dealt with by Hunter Yu Seatum and Taylor 9. Korea was in an uproar. People were shocked by the series of events, and public opinion immediately lashed out at Lost Day. The incident occurred when the whole world was focused on Korea, so it was impossible to ignore. If you look at this photo, the 3 hunters are. Eyewitnesses and photo evidence continued to pour in. Evidence that would have been buried by the influence of Lost Day. However, the incident became too big to ignore. Seatum was well aware of that fact, so he deliberately publicized it when most of the attention was on him. After all, dead men tell no tales. Ah, those few beepers suddenly came after us. What this few beeper? Beep beep, I am trying to talk here. So anyways, why did those few beepers sneak into the dungeon? Oh haha, those mother few beepers pretended to want to clear the dungeon together. Taylor busily told her side of the story to the media. She is a S-rank hunter and celebrity, so she received a lot of attention, but it was her gorgeous appearance that drew more attention. As evident by the fact that Yu Seatum, who actually had the main role, was rarely asked for an interview, while Taylor even appeared on morning talk shows. Of course, Lost Day couldn't remain silent either. Lost Day's guild master says these hunters were contracted and have nothing to do with the guild. Power also plays a role in the media. If Lost Day said so, nobody could refute it. But everyone knew. Was it possible for 3 contracted S-rank hunters to bribe the military and sneak into the dungeon without anyone noticing? However, the military denied it and forcefully discharged Colonel Han Heejung, who was in charge of managing the dungeon. On Lost Day's side, Yu Haram completely outed the rank interpreter Han Yujun. Thus, the news became that the military and Lost Day were not involved and that everything was perpetrated by Han Heejung and the 3 S-rank hunters. In the end, it was still impossible to tie all loose ends because the incident was too big. Celeste was able to guess through her father's high position that quite a few people were walking away from Lost Day. Perhaps this has dealt a tremendous blow to Lost Day. Afterwards, a video of Guild Master Yu Haram's public apology to the nation was released. People still booed him when he said he was sincerely apologizing and would take full responsibility for the incident. Everyone thought that if he was really sincere, he wouldn't have to cover his tracks. Celeste took a sip of her coffee from a straw. If members of a guild violate international law, the whole guild will be responsible. Perhaps there will be an assessment to determine the existence of the guild. Though of course, Lost Day won't collapse from this kind of scandal. Their power is too great for Korea to lose. But they were hit hard twice in a row and won't be able to act rashly for the time being. However, the fact that a large guild of that size received an assessment is a fatal blow to its image. In the hunter industry, where image is the most important thing, their image has been completely destroyed. Did Mr. Autumn plan this? The timing was impeccable. When Celeste was thinking about it, the cafe's door opened and a plainly dressed Autumn walked in. Hello. This is a damn expensive cafe. As soon as he arrived, he checked the price for a cup of coffee and his eyes widened. It was so expensive even though it's not a place that specializes in coffee. It was really hard to get in contact with you. I've been busy lately. It is true. Although Taylor was running wild in public, he was working behind the scene. Only today did he find some time off. Is there something urgent you called me for? It's fine for now, but... After closing the news, Celeste flipped through her tablet and played a video. International Swordsmanship Debate Competition. The International Swordsmanship Debate Competition is a swordsmanship competition hosted by the International Swordsmanship Hunter Federation, which has become a major sport since the value of weapons like swords have risen significantly over the last 30 years. Usually, the purpose of the debate is to show off everyone's swordsmanship and discuss them to improve the quality of swordsmanship on Earth. Naturally, competitions will be held to determine the participants' ranking. Why show me this? Come to think of it, I've been contacted by a person from the International Swordsmanship Hunter Federation. They said they were curious about the swordsmanship style I use and would really love it if I participated in the debate. However, I did not care for such a thing, so I've been hesitant to give them an answer. Then is the debate just around the corner? Celeste played another video when Autumn was thinking about it. An event from half a year ago. A video of Celeste's one-sided defeat against a woman. Oh. Celeste was an E-rank superhuman at the time. Usually, swordsmanship competitions were held between participants of the same rank, but in the case of prestigious families like Celeste's, sometimes competitions were held between people of varying ranks due to the nature of the different competitions. Because of this, Celeste's opponent was Sanagi, a D-rank superhuman and eldest daughter of Japan's renowned Okamoto family. A showdown between an E-rank and D-rank superhuman. The battle was a foregone conclusion. There's another debate coming up. Maybe I'm going to have to fight the Okamoto family again this time. Since both Sanagi and Celeste are promising talents, attention would be on them every time a debate is held. But you're a D rank now, aren't you? Yes, but Sanagi Okamoto recently rose to C rank. Crazy. I heard Sanagi Okamoto is around 20 years old. If you're born in a prestigious swordsman family, you'll naturally have many talents and skills with the swords, but terrifyingly, she even has a strong physique talent. Unlike other superpowers, physique grows gradually, so it's not easy for it to grow rapidly at a young age. If she continues like this, she could very well challenge a S rank one day. The only problem was that the talent belongs to the other party. That's why I need Hunter Autumn. I am training my physique steadily, but I also know that it's ridiculous to think that I can suddenly progress to C rank. There's only one way. For a stronger person than herself to push her limit with genuine swordsmanship. Hearing what she said, Autumn gave a puzzled look. Hey, you think that would even work? Asked Autumn sincerely. Yes, if it's you. Answered Celeste with all her heart. Autumn, who was about to say it's because I have a swordsmanship A+ rank talent, recalls something. Recalling how Celeste imitated his swordsmanship that he clumsily imitated. Wait, hold on, is her swordsmanship talent higher than C rank? I can't see her talent, but she was able to grasp my swordsmanship at first glance. In fact, it's normal for geniuses to stand out. However, modern swordsmanship has only developed for about 30 years with superhumans in mind, thus its short history made it difficult for talented people to blossom. But what if a genius learns swordsmanship that has thousands of years of history? I am not asking for a simple sparring session like last time. I'd like to have Hunter Autumn officially be the Costantini's family swordsman. Siadam stroked his chin. It's not a bad proposal. Rather, the offer came at a good time. He needed a place to weather the storm called Lost Day, and the Costantini family would be enough of a windbreaker. No matter what they planned, they would not go after Costantini's eldest daughter. It would be a good place to temporarily get out of the rain. I have to find a guild anyways. As a temporary place, Costantini will do. But as you know, I am too busy to leave Korea. It's okay, I'm thinking of staying in Korea a while longer. Okay, when do we start? I'll go back to my parents' house this week to prepare everything. Let's start next week, please. The goal is to defeat Sanagi Akamoto in a sword debate. Celeste's expression became resolute. After talking late into the afternoon at the cafe, the sun was starting to set, so I walked Celeste back, and once I got home, I flung myself on the couch. It's only been a week. In a week, I have done more damage with my own power than I thought I could to Lost Day. Lost Day will be on their toes for the time being. I was overjoyed. The fact that I, who is nothing but a F-rank hunter, scratched a guild like Lost Day, which many don't even dare to look at. Ring. It was a text from Taylor. It looks like that bastard Han Yujin is in the hospital. Why was Han Yujin, a non-combatant, in the hospital? My initial thought was that it's to avoid the media, but on second thought, it's probably the work of Lost Day's guild master. Yu Haram temper is so bad that he likely did something to Han Yujin after things didn't go as planned. You see, Autumn. How's everything going on your end? Taylor 9. I don't know. I think good. It's been a while since I was on TV, and it's fucking fun. Fuck, I think the rice is ready. You see, Autumn. Do you need help with anything? Taylor 9. Nope. Originally, I was going to go to the media myself. However, Taylor loved the job so much that I entrusted all of it to her. She says she doesn't like the attention, but somehow she loves to bully others. The target was Lost Day this time, so that's why Taylor has been extra fierce. You see, Autumn. Don't get caught up in the law. Taylor 9. How many times have I been charged with libel? I'll take care of everything. You see, Autumn. All right. I am going to be away for a while. Taylor 9. Okay. With that, I am free for the time being. I'll take another mission. There was a week until Celeste returned, so traveling to another dimension seemed like a good choice. Mission list. When I tried to check the list of protagonists, I saw something that stood out at the top. What is this, a list of recommendations? That's correct, I've organized the protagonists that are not a threat right now and could easily be dealt with. If I hunt them, will I absorb 2 ability? No, because it's not an emergency mission. However, you will gain an additional level. Wow. There were a total of 3 recommendations. First, the game I made has become a reality. Hashtag Fusion Fantasy. Hashtag Prophecy. Hashtag Neighboring Country. Hashtag Growth. Hashtag Thriller. Second, did I die again? Let's do it again. Hashtag Fantasy. Hashtag Regression. Hashtag Growth. Hashtag Exaggerated. Hashtag Bittersweet. Third daughter is a witch and master swordsman. Hashtag Fantasy. Hashtag Possession. Hashtag Strongest. Hashtag Talented. Hashtag Teen. All 3 are unusual. My criteria when choosing the protagonist. First, the level should be low, and secondly, it should be related to magic or swordsmanship. The third protagonist's level was the lowest at 70, so it should be the easiest. Although I wasn't confident in winning against a level 70, it also isn't impossible if I could somehow dig a trap like as if I was hunting a monster. Therefore, third daughter is a witch and master swordsman. I'll take this one. Do you want to go now? I had completed my preparations in advance. In case there was a use for it, I had packed my mega shooter as well. I nodded with a satisfied look, and soon my vision blurred. Traveling to Alethea Empire, the world of the level 70 protagonist Witch Ella. 10, 9, 8. Travel completed. The time dilation is 3.4102x. After the world slowly collapsed and reconstructed, I opened my eyes. A girl who looks like a middle school student was staring at me.
What is it? Only.
Instinctively, I looked at the top of her head and the words which Ella came into view.
She is the protagonist. This is the situation I didn't want to face the most.
Without any preparation, it is impossible to deal with a protagonist who is twice as powerful as I am. With my tension rising, Ella slowly opened her mouth and spoke.
You're the new swordsman instructor.
What? You became a sword instructor to Duke of Alma's Princess Ella.
Thank you for listening.
If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe, comment, and like the video.
Have a suggestion, let me know in the comments.